right, buckle up, everybody, because today we're diving into a story that's, well, it's captivating and it's disturbing. We're going to be looking into the case of Ali Abulaban, and you might know him better as Jin Kid. He's that TikTok star that was, convicted of a double murder.
It's one of those cases that really gets you thinking, about the image people project online. You know what I mean? Like, you see these picture-perfect lives on social media.
Right.
But what's really going on behind the scenes? And this case really brings that to light.
Yeah, for sure. And the crazy thing is the whole thing just like unravels so quickly. I mean, one minute he's this social media star with millions of followers, and then the next he's accused of murdering his wife Anna and her friend Rayburn. It's wild.
It really is.
So for this deep dive, our main source is going to be the Peacock documentary, The TikTok Star Murders.
Okay.
It's got everything: a whirlwind romance, jealousy fueled by social media, even some creepy stuff with technology and surveillance. Yeah. So to really understand how this all happened, we need to go back to the beginning, to when Ali and Anna first met. This is back in 2014, and Ali was stationed in Japan with the Air Force.
Okay.
Alla was like totally drawn to his personality, and they fell in love fast.
Yeah.
They got married, had a daughter named Amira, and from the outside, they looked like the perfect couple.
Yeah. Seems like it.
But we often see, there's a lot more to the story.
Right, yeah.
Right from the start, there were some red flags. Like, Ali getting discharged from the military wasn't just some random thing. It was because of an altercation he had with one of Anna's friends, which, could be a sign of some anger issues, maybe even some controlling behavior.
Yeah, for sure. And
Okay.
unfortunately, it sounds like those tendencies might have escalated over time.
Yeah. Makes you wonder how much those early experiences played a role in what happened later on.
Yeah.
But let's fast forward a bit. So Ali, he starts posting those impersonation videos on TikTok under the name Jin Kid.
Right.
And they blew up. Millions of views. He gets verified on Instagram, starts getting brand deals, the whole 9 yards. He basically became this social media success story. Crazy how fast that can happen, right?
Yeah, it's incredible. And that kind of online fame, it's powerful. The validation, the money, the opportunities.
Yeah.
It can be intoxicating, especially for someone like Ali who wanted to be an actor.
Totally. And it's kind of ironic, that Anna actually helped him with some of his videos, considering how things ended up between them. But yeah, behind all the glam and the success, their relationship was falling apart. Anna was feeling isolated in Virginia, so they moved to San Diego to be closer to her friends. Seemed like a good move, right?
On the surface, yeah, it does. But it's fascinating how sometimes these big life changes, even if they're meant to be positive, can actually make things worse. It's like the move to San Diego kind of magnified the problems that were already there in the relationship.
Yeah, you're right. And sadly, things took a much darker turn. Ali's drug use started to get out of control. It was even happening during his live streams. And he became insanely jealous of Anna's social media presence. Like, he was controlling who she could see, what she posted, how she spent her time. It was really messed up.
Yeah, that sounds like classic coercive control. It goes beyond just isolated incidents. It's like a pattern of behavior designed to dominate and control someone's life.
Wow.
And it can be incredibly hard to escape. And we also have to think about the pressures that Anna was probably facing, culturally speaking, too.
Absolutely.
A lot of factors at play.
Yeah, and it just breaks my heart thinking about what she must have been going through. I mean, there are actual recordings of them arguing where Ali's accusing her of cheating, using just awful, abusive language. And we know she felt trapped, worried about the stigma of divorce, worried about being deported, worried about losing custody of Amira. It's just a horrible situation all around.
Absolutely. Awful. And then, to make things even more complicated, you have Rayburn entering the picture.
Right. So Rayburn was a friend of Anna's who started to develop feelings for her. And of course, this just sent Ali into a spiral of jealousy and rage.
Yeah, I can imagine.
He even started getting physically violent with Anna. Things were clearly getting really dangerous.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah, and then Anna finds out that Ali's been cheating on her with her neighbor.
Oh, wow.
It was like the final straw.
Yeah.
She actually posted a TikTok video accusing him of cheating, which, only made things worse.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. He started threatening her, vandalized their apartment, and the whole thing just blew up.
Yeah, it's interesting how these private conflicts are playing out so publicly, on social media. It's like a whole other layer to the story.
Definitely. Yeah. So to try to calm things down, Ali agreed to move out of the apartment so Anna and their daughter could stay there.
Okay.
Seemed like a reasonable solution, right?
Okay.
But that's when things took a really, really dark turn. Yeah. Ali, he installed a listening app on his daughter's iPad. He basically turned it into a surveillance device.
Oh, wow. That's creepy.
Super creepy. I mean, he was eavesdropping on Anna without her even knowing. It's a total invasion of privacy.
Yeah, totally.
So Anna's trying to clean up the apartment after Ali trashed it, and she asks Rayburn to come help her.
Uh-huh.
Neither of them had any idea that Ali was listening to everything they were saying through this app.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And tragically, this is what led to the murders. Ali, he hears what they're saying, and he snaps. He drives over to the apartment, confronts them, and shoots them both dead. It's horrifying. And after the shootings, he goes and picks up his daughter from school like nothing even happened. It's chilling.
Oh, my God.
He was eventually arrested by police on the freeway, but this is just the beginning of the story. We'll get into all the details of the trial and everything in the next part of our deep dive. So after all this, after the murders and everything, what happened next?
Well, the aftermath of the murders is just as unsettling as the crime itself. During the first few court hearings, Ali showed this shocking lack of remorse, like going as far as to badmouth Anna.
Yeah, that courtroom outburst was all over the news. And then there was that jailhouse interview where, he was saying it was a crime of passion, but at the same time seemed more worried about his chances of making it in Hollywood.
Yeah, it was a strange mix of emotions.
For sure. So how did the legal stuff play out after that?
Well, the prosecution, they were pushing the idea of premeditation. They laid out this timeline, with all the steps Ali took, from putting that spyware on the iPad to his online searches. It really painted this disturbing picture.
Right. The premeditation is pretty obvious.
Yeah.
Especially with the spyware and the things he was searching for. But did the defense, with the whole heat of passion thing, does their argument have any weight? Like, what evidence did they even use to back that up?
The defense, they were trying to show Ali as this guy driven to a moment of bad judgment, overwhelmed by emotion. They pointed to his history with mental health, painting a picture of someone pushed over the edge.
Okay.
But the prosecution, they hit back hard. They kept stressing the calculated nature of what Ali did, especially with the listening app and him, deciding to go after Anna and Rayburn.
Yeah, it does seem like a tough argument to make when you think about those details. But in the end, it's up to the jury to decide what they believe.
Right.
So what was their verdict?
Well, there was this key piece of evidence that really sealed Ali's fate. Wow. His internet search history. The prosecution, they revealed that right before the murders, he was searching for things like sex workers, trash can, even chopped bodies.
Oh, well, that's pretty damning. It definitely doesn't sound like some spontaneous act of passion.
No, it doesn't.
So did the jury find him guilty?
The jury, they took their time, but they came back with a guilty verdict. 2 counts of first-degree murder. It was a clear sign that they didn't buy the heat of passion defense and recognized how serious Ali's crimes were.
This whole case is it's so complex. It really brings up a lot of questions about social media fame, the dark side of it, and the dangers of toxic relationships. But there's also this whole technology aspect we haven't really talked about. Can you tell us more about that listening app Ali used?
Yeah, for sure. The use of spyware, it really adds another layer to this whole thing. These apps, they're usually marketed as, parental control tools or for keeping an eye on employees.
Right.
But they raise some serious ethical and legal questions. And in this case, Ali straight up used this technology to spy on Anna. It became like a weapon for control, and in the end, a tool that helped make this horrible crime happen.
That's a scary thought. Makes you think about, all these surveillance tools that are out there and how easy it is for them to be misused. Are there, any safeguards to prevent this kind of abuse?
Well, that's the thing. These apps, they're easy to get, and they can be used secretly. That makes them ripe for abuse, especially in situations like domestic violence or stalking. Some apps do require everyone involved to consent to their use, but others, they can be installed without anyone knowing. And that lack of transparency and accountability, it creates this really dangerous situation where technology can be used against people without them even knowing.
That's super concerning. It really highlights the need for stricter rules and some ethical guidelines for how these surveillance tools are made and sold.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a conversation we need to be having as a society. Like, how do we balance the legitimate uses of these apps with the potential for harm? How do we protect people's privacy while also dealing with the real threats these technologies pose when they're in the wrong hands?
These are important questions, especially as technology keeps changing so rapidly. But for now, let's go back to Ali and the consequences of what he did. What was his sentence?
Because of how serious the crimes were, Ali got life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge, when handing down the sentence, really emphasized that the murders were planned and how devastating it was for the families of the victims.
Wow, that's a tough but, probably deserved punishment for such a horrible crime. It's a really tragic end to a story that, at the beginning, seemed so promising but ended up in such a dark place. But I think there are still things we can learn from this.
For sure. We can't just see this as some isolated incident. It brings up big questions about, the role social media platforms play in all this and what responsibility they have to prevent harm. We need to look at how these platforms can be used to encourage healthy relationships and responsible behavior online instead of turning into breeding grounds for toxicity and violence.
You're absolutely right. It's a really complex issue that needs everyone, individuals, platforms, and society as a whole to work together. We need to encourage critical thinking, media literacy, and empathy so we can create a safer and more responsible online world. But before we dive into those bigger questions, let's take a moment to remember the victims.
It's so important to remember that behind the headlines and the legal battles, there were real people whose lives were cut short. Anna and Rayburn had their own stories, dreams, and people who loved them. And now, those people are left with this unbearable loss.
Their stories are a powerful reminder of the real cost of violence and how it impacts families and communities. As we move forward in this discussion, let's honor their memory by learning from this and trying to prevent similar tragedies from happening again. We'll continue this conversation in the next part of our deep dive. Yeah, it's a really, really sad reminder that behind all those perfect pictures and videos online, there are real people with real lives and real problems. This case has just been like a crash course in so many issues. The dangers of online fame, the scary reality of controlling relationships, the ethical questions around spyware, and how we can all work together to create a safer online world. So where do we go from here? What are the big things you think our listeners should take away from all this?
I think this deep dive, even though it's been tough to hear about, it shows how important awareness is. Like, first off, you got to remember that what you see online, those personas people put out there, they often hide what's really going on in their lives. What you see on social media, it's rarely the whole picture.
Yeah, that's so true.
And then it's super important to be able to spot those red flags, those signs of controlling behavior in relationships. Things like possessiveness, trying to isolate someone from their friends and family, manipulation, and just like escalating aggression.
Right.
And lastly, we all got to think about our own responsibility when we're consuming all this content on social media. We contribute to the culture, whether it's a culture that lifts people up or one that exploits them.
That's a really good point. It's so easy to get caught up in the entertainment aspect and forget that there are actual human beings behind those profiles. So how can we, as individuals, be smarter about how we consume online content?
It starts with, having a healthy dose of skepticism, Don't just believe everything you see. Think about why someone might be posting something. And be careful about those who seem way too focused on looking perfect. Remember, social media often twists reality.
It's like we're constantly being hit with these highlight reels, which makes it hard to know what's real and what's fake. Is there a way to enjoy social media and still be aware of all that?
Definitely. It's all about being mindful of how you use it. Mix up what you're seeing in your feed, follow some accounts that challenge you to think differently, have real conversations, and focus on genuine connections instead of chasing those likes and follows.
Okay, that makes sense.
Social media is a tool, right? You can use it to connect, learn, and have fun, but always, always be critical and think for yourself.
That's great advice. And it ties into what we've been talking about, how striving for online fame, while it can be tempting, can also be dangerous.
Yeah.
What would you say to people who want to be influencers or those who are already dealing with all the crazy stuff that comes with online fame?
I'd tell them to put their mental health first. Don't let the pressure of keeping up that perfect image online take over your life. Stay grounded, surround yourself with people who support you, and remember that you're worth more than just likes, followers, and all that temporary online validation. And don't be afraid to take a break from social media if it starts to feel too much or if it's affecting your mental health.
That's so important. It goes back to what we talked about earlier, how those online personas can hide real struggles. It's easy to forget that influencers are just regular people with their own vulnerabilities and problems.
Exactly. And we, the people consuming their content, need to remember that. We need to create a culture where it's okay to not be perfect, where being genuine is more important than looking perfect.
Well said. This deep dive has been a lot to process, but it's been really eye-opening. It's a tragic story, but there are some valuable lessons in it for all of us. So to everyone listening, we really encourage you to think about this case and what it means. Think about how you use social media, who you follow, and what you're taking in. And most importantly, remember that real life is happening outside of those screens.
I agree. And if there's one last thing I want you to remember, it's this. Cherish those relationships you have in your own life, those genuine connections that bring you support, meaning, and happiness. Those are the things that really matter.
That's beautifully said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a real thought-provoking journey, and we hope it's been helpful for you. We'll be back next time with another interesting case that explores the crazy world we live in online. Until then, take care and be well.